Tonight, you are lying beneath a heavy canopy bed in a quiet country house in England. The year is 1885. Outside the window, the gardens are still covered in morning mist. Somewhere below you, in the deep part of the house, a maid is already moving. You cannot hear her footsteps. The carpets are too thick. But you can feel the house beginning to stir around you, the way a large, quiet animal shifts its weight in sleep. Tonight, we will spend an ordinary day in the life of a Victorian noblewoman. Not a queen, not a famous duchess, not someone whose name appears in history books. Just a woman named Lady Harriet Ashford, living comfortably in the English countryside in the year 1885. And before she has even opened her eyes, 12 people have already begun working around her. Harriet's bedroom is a large room on the first floor of Ashford House. The walls are covered in pale green wallpaper printed with small white flowers. The pattern repeats in long vertical rows from the floor to the ceiling. The ceiling is painted white. In the center, a plaster medallion holds a brass gas fitting that has not yet been lit this morning. The bed itself is enormous. It sits on a raised platform of dark mahogany, with 4 posts rising nearly to the ceiling, and a canopy of heavy silk stretched between them. The curtains on 3 sides of the bed can be drawn closed at night, making the bed almost a room within a room, a small, warm, private darkness. Harriet is not yet awake. She is lying on her side beneath 3 layers of bedding, a cotton sheet, a wool blanket, a thick eiderdown filled with goose feathers. The weight of it is considerable. On a cold morning, it has the quality of a firm, gentle pressure across the body. The room is cold. This is not unusual. There is no central heating in Ashford House. The fireplace on the far wall was laid and lit by a housemaid at 6 o'clock in the morning, before Harriet was awake, and it has been burning for nearly an hour. But the room is large and the fire is small, and the warmth has not yet reached the middle of the space. The housemaid who lit the fire did not make a sound. This was not an accident. It was a skill she had spent months developing. How to carry a coal scuttle without it scraping. How to open a fireplace screen without the hinges catching. How to leave a room as quietly as you entered it. Harriet stirs. She does not open her eyes immediately. She lies still for a moment in the way of someone who knows they do not have to rush. The day will arrange itself. It always does. On the nightstand beside her there is a small porcelain water jug, covered with a cloth to keep it clean. There is a candle in a silver holder, not yet lit today. There is a copy of a novel she is part way through, a thin piece of ribbon marking her place somewhere in the middle. She reaches for the bell pull. The bell pull is a length of embroidered fabric hanging beside the bed. It connects through a series of wires and springs running inside the walls to a bell in the servants' corridor on the ground floor. When Harriet pulls it, a small brass bell swings on its bracket and rings once. A lady's maid named Ada hears it and begins to climb the stairs. Ada has been with Harriet for 11 years. She is a quiet, precise woman in her mid-30s who communicates largely through small adjustments. A sleeve straightened here, a pin repositioned there. She rarely speaks unless spoken to, and when she does, her voice is low and unhurried. She arrives with a pitcher of hot water and pours it into the washstand basin on the far side of the room. Steam rises for a moment in the cold air. Harriet sits up in bed. She is wearing a long cotton nightgown, high-necked, with small buttons down the front. Her hair is in a thick plait over one shoulder. The process of washing and dressing will take approximately an hour. This would seem remarkable to someone from a later century. But in 1885, getting dressed is not a simple matter. It is a slow, layered procedure that requires help, patience, and a good deal of practice. Harriet begins with washing. The warm water in the basin, a bar of glycerin soap, a soft cloth. She washes her face, her neck, her hands, and wrists. In winter, there is something deeply pleasant about warm water on cold skin. Then the undergarments. A chemise first, a long sleeveless garment of fine white cotton that falls to the knee. Then stockings pulled smooth and secured with garters just above the knee. Then a corset. The corset of 1885 is not the punishing, exaggerated garment of popular imagination. Harriet's is made of pale pink cotton coutil, stiffened with whalebone and a steel busk down the front. Ada laces it up the back with quiet efficiency. The lacing takes perhaps 3 minutes. The pressure it applies is firm and even, like a hand placed flat against the torso. Harriet has worn a corset every day since she was 16. She does not think about it. It is simply a part of getting dressed, the way shoes are simply a part of going out. Over the corset, a crinolet, which is a small half-bustle of wire and fabric worn at the back to give the skirt its shape. Then a corset cover, a petticoat, and another petticoat over that. Then the dress itself. Today, Harriet has chosen a morning dress of steel blue wool. The skirt is narrow at the front, drawn back into soft gathers that fall into a small train at the rear. The bodice is fitted with a high collar trimmed in ivory lace and long sleeves that close with a row of tiny buttons at the wrist. There are 16 of those buttons on each sleeve. Ada does each one. While Ada works, Harriet sits at her dressing table and looks into the mirror. The dressing table has 3 sections, a central mirror and 2 smaller ones at angles on either side, so that she can see both the front and side of her face at once. The surface is covered in a white cloth and arranged with small bottles and boxes. Rose water, almond cream, a pot of lip salve. Hair comes last. Ada unpins the plait, brushes it out from root to end with a wide-toothed comb, and begins the process of dressing it. In 1885, the fashionable style keeps most of the hair up, twisted and pinned close to the head, with a small fringe of curls across the forehead. Ada has done this style so many times that her hands move automatically, her fingers finding the right sections, the right angles, without any visible thought. pins go in one by one. The hair holds. A small brooch at the collar. Earrings. A simple bracelet. Harriet stands. Ada steps back and looks at her, makes one small adjustment to the back of the skirt. They are finished. The breakfast room is on the ground floor on the east side of the house where the morning light comes in. It is a smaller room than the dining room, with pale yellow wallpaper and a round table near the window. In summer, this room is pleasant. In March, it is cold despite the fire, but the sun, when it appears, falls directly through the glass and lies in warm strips across the tablecloth. A footman is already in the room when Harriet enters. He stands near the sideboard without moving or looking at her. This is correct behavior. He is not supposed to draw attention to himself. The sideboard holds the breakfast things arranged in covered dishes over small spirit lamps to keep them warm. Scrambled eggs, grilled kidneys, sliced bread, kippers in a covered plate that smells strongly enough to discourage investigation. Harriet takes a small amount of scrambled eggs and a piece of toast. She sits at the table. Tea is poured. The tea things are laid properly. A silver pot, a small jug of warm milk, a bowl of sugar with tongs, a second small pot of hot water to dilute the tea if it has grown too strong. Harriet takes her tea with a small amount of milk and no sugar. This does not need to be requested. The footman already knows. The Morning Post has been placed beside her plate. In 1885, the postal system in England is a remarkable thing. There are multiple deliveries each day in most towns. Letters posted in London in the morning can arrive in the afternoon. The Royal Mail moves with the trains, sorting letters in special carriages as they travel across the country. Harriet receives 4 letters this morning. The first is from her sister in Bath, a long and detailed account of a dinner party attended 3 days ago, full of descriptions of dresses and conversational misdirections in the unfortunate soup. Harriet reads this slowly, eating her toast. The second is an invitation to a garden party in June from a family whose estate is 12 miles to the north. Harriet sets this aside to deal with later. The third is from her land agent, a man who manages the farms and tenancies on the estate. It contains several paragraphs about drainage. Harriet reads the first 2 and skips to the end, where the total sum required is given. The fourth is a bill from a milliner in London. This is the ordinary content of a Victorian noblewoman's Morning Post. Invitations, family news, estate business, tradespeople's accounts. The day begins with paper. Harriet sets the letters in a small pile to be dealt with after breakfast. She refills her tea. She looks out the window at the garden. The mist has mostly lifted now. The lawn is very green. A gardener is moving slowly along the far border with a barrow. From this distance, he is a small figure, making small, deliberate movements. She watches him for a moment. Then she returns to her sister's letter, which she has not quite finished. After breakfast, Harriet puts on a wool cape and a pair of stout leather boots and goes outside. This is her habit on fine mornings. The walk takes between 30 and 40 minutes depending on how far she goes. She does it for no particular reason except that she likes it, and because moving through the estate is, in some way, a form of managing it. She comes from a family that has owned this land for 3 generations. She grew up here. She knows every part of it with the easy familiarity of a place you have known since childhood. The way a garden becomes part of your geography so that you could walk it in the dark. The formal gardens immediately surrounding the house are laid out in a geometric pattern, with clipped hedges and gravel paths and beds that are bare now in early spring. By June, they will be full of roses. By August, the cutting garden will provide enough flowers to fill every room in the house. The head gardener is a man named Hobbs. He has 4 under-gardeners and 2 garden boys under him. Together they keep approximately 3 acres of formal garden in good order, along with the kitchen garden, the orchard, and the greenhouse. The greenhouse is a long glass structure built against the south-facing wall of the kitchen garden. Inside it is warm and damp and smells of soil and green things. Along the benches there are terracotta pots holding pelargoniums, ferns, exotic specimens that would not survive outdoors. Against the back wall, tomato plants are already being trained up their supports. Harriet pauses here for a moment. She is fond of the greenhouse. There is something satisfying about the warmth and about the evidence it contains of patience, of things being tended carefully over a long period of time. She continues to the stable yard. The stable yard is a square of cobblestones enclosed on 3 sides by loose boxes and a tack room. The smell here is hay and horses and leather. 2 grooms are working this morning, mucking out and brushing down. They stop when Harriet enters the yard and she nods at them, and they nod back. Nothing is said. Harriet's own horse is a gray mare called Patience. She is in the 2nd box on the right. Harriet opens the lower half of the door and Patience moves forward immediately, pushing her nose into Harriet's palm. Harriet spends a few minutes here, doing nothing in particular, just standing. Then she continues on a circuit of the kitchen garden and the orchard, where the apple trees are just beginning to think about budding, and back through the gate in the stone wall and along the gravel path to the front door. The footman on the front steps opens the door before she reaches it. She goes inside. Between the hours of 3 and 5 in the afternoon, a Victorian noblewoman is available. This is called calling hours, and it is a system so precisely governed by custom that it requires almost no conscious thought to operate. Everyone who participates in it understands exactly what is expected: where to sit, how long to stay, what subjects are acceptable, what tone to use. Today, Harriet expects 2 visitors. The first arrives at 3:30. This is Mrs. Hartley, the wife of a local magistrate who comes with her eldest daughter. They are shown into the drawing room by the footman who has arranged the room beforehand. A fire in the grate. The good chairs placed at appropriate angles. The small table beside the sofa already set with the calling card tray. Mrs. Hartley's card was sent round yesterday by her footman, alerting Harriet to expect the visit. This is the correct procedure. One does not call unannounced unless the relationship is very close. Mrs. Hartley and Harriet are friendly, but not so close as to dispense with the formality. They talk for 20 minutes. The subjects covered are the coming season in London, a concert to be held at the assembly rooms in the nearby market town, the health of Mrs. Hartley's husband who has had a cold, and the extraordinary price of certain fabrics at the drapers in town. Nothing of any particular substance is said. This is normal. The visit is not for the exchange of information. It is a form of social maintenance, a regular performance that keeps the connections between families in good order. Tea is brought in. The cups are very thin and white, painted with small blue flowers. The teapot matches. There are small sandwiches on a plate, the bread cut very thin, the crusts removed. The sandwiches are cucumber and egg and cress. Harriet pours. Mrs. Hartley's daughter, who is 17 and quiet and clearly not entirely comfortable, holds her cup correctly and says very little. Harriet asks her one gentle question about her piano playing. The girl answers in 3 careful sentences. Harriet nods and returns her attention to Mrs. Hartley. At 5 minutes to 4, Mrs. Hartley puts down her cup. This is the signal. She and her daughter rise. Harriet rises. There is a small exchange of farewells. Harriet sees them to the door of the drawing room. The footman sees them out. The second visitors arrive at 4. These are a couple, the Merrifields, who are passing through the county and have written ahead to call. They stay 30 minutes, during which they discuss the condition of the roads, a recent change in the train timetable, and a mutual acquaintance in Scotland whose name Harriet has to search for before she locates it somewhere in her memory. They leave at 4:30. Harriet sits alone in the drawing room for a few minutes, in the sudden quiet. The fire has settled into a bed of orange embers. Outside the window, the light has begun to soften toward afternoon. The calling cards from today's visitors sit on the silver tray. This is her life. These ordinary, carefully maintained exchanges. The rooms arranged just so, the tea brought in at exactly the right moment, the conversations kept to their proper register. It is a kind of work, and it takes considerable skill, even if it does not look like it from the outside. From 5 o'clock until dinner, the afternoon belongs to Harriet. This is the long, quiet part of the day, the part that Victorian life was full of in a way that later centuries would find difficult to imagine. Hours of unscheduled time, hours without purpose, without urgency, just time, passing slowly in a warm room. Harriet goes to the library. The library at Ashford House is a room she has loved since childhood. It occupies the corner of the house where the south and west walls meet, and on clear afternoons it catches light from 2 directions. The bookshelves reach from floor to ceiling on every wall except the one with the fireplace, and a mahogany ladder on a brass rail lets you reach the upper shelves. The collection was assembled over 3 generations. There are leather-bound sets of the classics, travel writing, history, a great many novels, a shelf of improving works on natural history that no one has opened in decades. Harriet takes a novel from the shelf. She has been reading it for a week. She settles into the armchair closest to the fire with her feet on a small embroidered footstool, and she reads. She reads for an hour without looking up. This is not remarkable to Harriet. Reading for extended periods of uninterrupted time is something she has done her entire life. Victorian women of her class were, by the standards of most centuries, exceptionally well read. The novel was a Victorian invention in many ways, and the Victorian middle and upper classes devoured them. A footman brings fresh tea at 5:30 without being asked. At 6 o'clock, Harriet moves to the smaller sitting room adjoining the library, where her writing desk stands by the window. She has correspondence to deal with. The invitation from the family to the north needs answering. There is a note to write to her sister, a short reply to the land agent about the drainage. She writes at a small oak desk fitted with a leather surface and a raised shelf for ink bottles and postage stamps. The stamps show the profile of Queen Victoria, who has been on them since before Harriet was born. Harriet uses a steel-nibbed pen dipped in black ink, and her handwriting is clear and slightly forward-slanting, the product of considerable instruction in childhood. She writes the reply to the invitation first. Yes, she and Lord Ashford will be happy to attend. She seals it in a cream envelope and writes the address on the front. Then her sister. This takes longer. She has news to relay, questions to ask, a small observation about the Hartley daughter that she thinks will amuse. She writes 2.5 pages and signs it with her first name. The drainage letter is 3 lines. She gives the sealed envelopes to the footman who appears at her door, and he takes them to the outgoing post tray in the hall. She turns back to the window. The garden is in blue shadow now. The last of the light sits in the sky above the tree line, a strip of pale gold fading upward into gray. A rook crosses from left to right, moving in a steady direct line going wherever rooks go in the evening. Harriet watches it until it disappears. Dinner at Ashford House is served at 8 o'clock. Lord Ashford returns from his study at 10 minutes to 8. He is a quiet, somewhat distant man who manages the estate accounts and serves on various local committees and reads a great deal. He and Harriet have been married for 16 years. They are not unhappy. They are, in the way of many long marriages, comfortable. They go into dinner together. The dining room is the largest room in the house and has been laid for 2. In winter, or when no guests are expected, it is a slightly austere room. The long mahogany table can seat 20. Tonight, 2 places are set at one end, the candlesticks clustered at that end of the table, the rest of the room in comparative shadow. Gas wall sconces provide additional light along the walls. Gas lighting came to Ashford House 12 years ago. Before that, the house ran entirely on candles and oil lamps. The gas light is steadier and brighter, but it gives off a faint smell and a slight hiss that you stop noticing after a few months. The meal begins. There are 5 courses, a clear soup, a fish course, a small piece of sole in cream sauce, a roast, tonight a saddle of lamb with roasted root vegetables and a sauce made from the cooking juices. Then a sweet, a steamed pudding with custard. Then cheese and biscuits. Each course is brought from the kitchen by the footman, carried upstairs on covered plates, set down in front of Harriet and Lord Ashford, removed when finished, replaced. The kitchen is in the basement 2 floors below. The cook, Mrs. Beale, has been working since 2 o'clock this afternoon on this meal. She has 2 kitchen maids assisting her, one washing and peeling, one doing simpler cooking tasks. The kitchen is a hot room full of steam and the smell of roasting meat. None of this is visible from the dining room. What is visible is only the finished result. Clean white plates. Food appearing as if from nowhere. Wine poured at the right moment without being asked. Harriet and Lord Ashford talk during dinner. Not continuously and not about anything remarkable. He mentions something he read in the newspaper about a debate in Parliament. She mentions Mrs. Hartley's visit. He asks about the land agent's letter. She tells him about the drainage. The conversation settles into comfortable silence for a while. This is not uncomfortable. There is something restful about sharing a meal in a room where everything has been done correctly, where the candlelight is steady and the wine is good and nothing is required of you except to eat. Outside the tall dining room windows, it is completely dark. The garden is invisible. After dinner, Harriet and Lord Ashford move to the drawing room. He sits near the fire with a book. She works on a piece of embroidery she has been doing for several months. A large canvas worked in wool depicting a garden scene. It is slow work. She does it when she wants to do something with her hands while her mind wanders. A lamp burns on the table beside her. At 10 o'clock, the butler brings a small tray. Warm milk for Harriet, a whiskey and soda for Lord Ashford, a plate with a few small biscuits. This is the nightly signal that the house is winding down. Downstairs in the servants' quarters, work is already finishing. The kitchen maids have washed up and gone to their rooms. The housemaids have put out extra coal for the morning fires and turned down the beds. The footmen are cleaning the last of the silver. The cook has sat down in the kitchen with a cup of tea and a relief that is felt in every part of her body. Ashford House has a household of 14 servants. This is a moderate number for an estate of this size in 1885. The housekeeper who oversees the female staff, the butler who oversees the male staff, the cook and her kitchen staff, 4 housemaids who clean the rooms and light the fires, 2 footmen who serve at table and attend to the family, a lady's maid for Harriet, a valet for Lord Ashford, a coachman and 2 grooms in the stables, a head gardener and his staff. All of these people are in the house or on the grounds at this moment, moving quietly through their final tasks of the evening or already asleep in their beds in the attic rooms and the servants' wing. Harriet is not thinking about any of them in particular. They are simply the condition of her life, like the walls of the house or the trees in the garden. At 10:30, she folds her embroidery and puts it in the basket beside her chair. Lord Ashford looks up from his book. They say good night. Harriet takes her lamp and walks upstairs. The corridor is quiet. The house has settled into the particular stillness of a large building at night. The creaks and small movements of wood and stone, the faint sounds of the wind against the glass. Ada is waiting in Harriet's room. She unpins Harriet's hair. She brushes it out all the way down, stroke by stroke, until it lies smooth and loose over Harriet's shoulders. She helps Harriet out of the blue wool dress. The buttons again, all 16 on each sleeve. The corset loosened, the layers peeled back one by one. The nightgown. Harriet sits at the dressing table one more time. Ada removes the earrings, removes the bracelet, places them in the velvet-lined boxes where they live. She turns down the gas lamp at the wall. Harriet gets into bed. The sheets are cool and clean. They have been changed today, as they are changed every Monday, and washed in the copper in the basement laundry and pressed with a flat iron heated on the kitchen range. They smell faintly of lavender, which the laundry maid places in the linen press. Ada draws the curtains of the bed closed. Harriet lies in the warm darkness. The fire has burned down to a low, steady glow. The room is quiet. Somewhere outside, very far away, an owl calls once and is silent. Tomorrow morning, the housemaid will rise before 6 and carry coal up the stairs to light this fire again. The cook will be in the kitchen by 7, and the first bread rolls will be in the oven before 8. The gardener will be at the gates of the kitchen garden when the light is good enough to work, and he will spend the morning in the greenhouse with his seedlings and his careful attention. The letters will arrive, the tea will be poured, the house will begin again. Lady Harriet does not think about any of this. She is already asleep.